alright, you're alright tonight.
Owning our own story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. That's a quote from Brene Brown regarding shadow work.
Reach for the heavens, reach for the stars, reach for forgiveness, embrace who you are, and don't be afraid to stand in the rain. There's nothing to lose and all the world to gain. Everybody feels like this sometimes, like they don't have much to offer, and everybody feels like this sometimes. But you're alright, yeah. Everybody feels like this sometimes, like they don't have much to offer, and everybody feels like this sometimes. But you're alright tonight. You're alright tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. If for those of you who do not know, Chris is a social entrepreneur, a licensed psychotherapist, and an award-winning musician who has dedicated his life to helping people and organizations fulfill their calling through coaching, training, inspirational speaking, and uplifting music. So if you'd like to learn more about Chris, or if you'd like to buy some of his music, just go to www.chrischickering.com/music. And so thank you again so much, Chris, and for selecting songs that are so related to today's message. So owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. So my purpose today is to support you in owning your story instead of running from it. And the human condition that today's message addresses is keeping our shadow in the shadows and not doing our shadow work. And the spiritual solution is bringing our shadow out of the shadows and doing our shadow work. So what is shadow work, and what is the shadow? Well, last week my message was on spiritual bypassing, and the shadow, not doing our shadow work is a way that we spiritually bypass. So in the same book I was mentioning last week by Robert Augustus Masters called Spiritual Bypassing, he has a chapter on shadow work. And he defines shadow work as the practice of acknowledging, facing, engaging, and integrating what we have turned away from, disowned, or otherwise rejected in ourselves. So some of those things we're conscious of, some of those things we're not conscious of. But there are those things that we just don't want to deal with, especially us in New Thought, because we're positive spirituality. So we don't want to, deal with that stuff that we don't like. So our shadow, and I say our shadow because, sorry for the bad news, but we all have one. Our shadow is those aspects of ourselves that we consciously or unconsciously hide from ourselves and from others. And reclaiming these aspects of ourselves is what shadow work is all about. If we're ignorant of these aspects of ourselves, or if we are in denial of them and we attempt to keep them in the shadow, then what happens is we project them onto others, individually and collectively. When we can't see our shadow, we convince ourselves that we don't have one. And we unconsciously project these aspects on others. And it's because the reason that we do that is because it's so much easier to see in others what we are blind to in ourselves. I think, Jesus said, take the speck out of your, take the log out of your own eye so you can see, remove the speck in others. But the bad news is about shadow, if you spot it, you got it. We cannot see in others what is not a part of ourselves. So in his not yet published book, Living as Our Awakened Self, our longtime Unity Santa Fe member and past board president Ralph Huber quotes author Debbie Ford. She said, "We don't have to look far to discover that we are usually doing the exact thing we are judging others for. It may show up in a completely different way, yet the driving force behind our behavior is in fact the same." And Ralph points out that a clear sign that you're projecting is when you start casting forth blame and judgment. Plus, the more angry you are and the more wrong you make another person, the greater your projection onto another of the very things that you have denied within yourself. And Ralph says we can tell how big our shadow is by how frequent and intense our "you should be different" wrong making of others is. And here's some real life examples of projection in action from the book, The Shadow Effect by Deepak Chopra, Debbie Ford, and Marianne Williamson. You probably remember some of these. The former governor of New York, Eliot Spitzer, spent his career trying to clean up prostitution because he deemed it so unacceptable. And then he was caught in a call girl scandal. The shadow in action. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, who continually pointed his finger in outrage and led the charge to impeach President Bill Clinton for sexual indiscretions, was later found having an affair outside his marriage. The shadow in action. The famous preacher, Reverend Ted Haggard, who rallied against the immorality of homosexuality, was later caught having a drug-fueled homosexual relationship. The shadow in action. So in her book, Debbie writes of a personal experience she had. She said, "I once dated a man I considered to be a bit chubby and out of shape. After a few months of dating, I noticed that no matter where we went, he would point out the guy who was overweight, who had a pot belly, or whose pants hung too low. And one day we were walking through the airport on our way out of town for a romantic getaway. He pointed his finger at another man he didn't even know and would never see again and said, 'What a slob. Why do you think that guy doesn't take care of himself?' She said, I finally couldn't keep my mouth shut any longer, and I mustered up the courage to tell him that he was just projecting his own weight concerns on various poor overweight men he didn't even know. I suggested that instead of pointing his finger at them, he should just look down. I thought he was going to trip getting off the escalator as he spotted, as if for the first time, his own bulging belly. His face dropped as he realized that he too was carrying an extra 25 pounds of unwanted weight. Embarrassed, he sheepishly asked me if he really looked like the other men." Well, this happens all the time. I recall once working with someone whom I believe, in retrospect, totally came into my life by divine appointment. She showed up in my life to show me my shadow aspects in such magnitude that I couldn't help seeing them in her. And I recall being horrified when I realized I was looking in a mirror. Of course, her shadow aspects were much more extreme than mine, in my ego's humble opinion. But wow, what a life-changing event that was. I really saw myself in so much of her behavior, and I had an opportunity to recognize and acknowledge this part of me and to get busy cleaning it up. So being ignorant of or refusing to do shadow work is very much related to spiritual bypassing, because it is a form of spiritual bypassing. And just as in other forms of spiritual bypassing, in unity and other positive spirituality paths, we are particularly susceptible to it. We are susceptible to denying our shadow. So this is all the more reason that we must be keenly aware of what the shadow is and how to shine our light on it. So, you may be saying, well, how is this related to Unity Santa Fe and being a part of this spiritual community? Well, as most of you know, we have something called our mission-centered partnership, which we've been working on for several years. And shadow work and integration by ministry leaders and other members of the congregation is part of building a sustainable mission-centered partnership ministry, because we cannot evolve our ministry until the minister, other ministry leaders, and everyone involved in our community begin engaging in shadow integration. So if any of us in leadership haven't done our shadow work, then how can we be truly present, compassionate, and supportive of anyone else and their shadow? So therefore, part of our Unity Santa Fe mission-centered partnership vision is to identify a methodology or system of shadow work which builds a cultural norm in our spiritual community. And this is really essential, because culture trumps mission every time. And we cannot do our mission to raise consciousness, transform lives, heal the planet one person at a time, unless we develop and create a cultural norm in which we all do our shadow work one person at a time. So our board is currently studying Ralph Huber's unpublished, at least so far, book, Living as Our Awakened Self. And we're delighted that Ralph will be zooming in on our next session, in which we'll be exploring a specific shadow work process that shows up whenever we should on ourselves or others, or whenever we shouldn't on ourselves and others. When we're saying, I should be doing this, you should be doing that, I shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, there is a way that a wonderful, easy process that Ralph came up with to, in some respect, it really is a way of beginning to do our shadow work. And we'll be bringing this out to the entire community later. But we feel that as a board, we have to do our work first before we ask you to do something that we may not have done as fully as we can. When I lived in Hawaii for 10 years, there was a saying in Pidgin English, Hawaiian Pidgin English, "That's why hard." That's why hard. And so why is it? I guess I just want to not be in denial about the difficulty and how hard it can be to do shadow work. But if we're just showing up at Unity Santa Fe virtually, and when we're in person someday again, and we're just showing up to listen to some great spiritual principles and some uplifting music and some deepening meditation, then we're really, we're just doing, we're not doing enough. And so we have to go deeper. And working with our shadow takes courage, it takes openness, and it takes vulnerability. And shadow work isn't easy. It can be uncomfortable, it can be messy, it can reveal emotional rawness, because often unhealed wounds are revealed in the process. So Robert Masters says, the ass it kicks is the one upon which we are sitting. The pain it brings up is the pain we've been fleeing most of our life. The psycho-emotional breakdown it catalyzes are the precursors to hugely relevant breakthroughs. The doors it opens are doors that have shown up year after year in our dreams, awaiting our entry. Real shadow work not only breaks us down, but also breaks us open, turning frozen yesterday into fluid now. He said, eventually, if we continue going more deeply into the work, our habit of distancing ourselves from shadow elements will be replaced by a compassionate, courageous embracing of whatever we have disowned, marginalized, or rejected in ourselves. As we deeply encounter our shadow without losing ourselves in it, we free its energies and develop a genuine intimacy with it, until our shadow is no longer an it, but rather a reclaimed us. He says this is true integration, organic and real, felt right to the core, manifesting as a deeply felt sense of wholeness, balance, and integrity. And he says the more deeply we dive, the less we mind the upsetting waves. You see, our shadow is continually calling us for connection, illumination, love, and healing. All we have to do is enter what we have spent most of our life trying to escape or deny. So, why do we want to do it? Well, unity is not only a positive path for spiritual living, unity is a practical path for spiritual living. And Masters points out that shadow work is not significantly taken into account in religion and most spiritual paths, especially those that marginalize or insufficiently address the psychological and emotional dimensions of experience. So in unity, it's important, more important than perhaps in other paths, to not allow our spiritual progress to override, repress, or trivialize emotion. So what's in it for you and me? Well, shadow work results in a more integrated and resilient sense of worth and a sense of self, with increased self-compassion and decreased anxiety. Marianne Williamson says, ultimately, the healing of our world. Hey, does that sound familiar? Part of our mission is to heal the planet, right? So she says, ultimately, the healing of our world will emerge not from our changing and correcting others, but from our willingness to change and correct ourselves. She says, since all minds are joined, our ability to self-correct has a corrective influence on the entire universe. Wow, are you up to it? Are you really up to doing your part? Am I really up to doing my part to heal the planet, one person at a time? Often called the Einstein of consciousness studies, American philosopher and mystic Ken Wilber brilliantly identified the four ups of integral living: growing up, waking up, cleaning up, and showing up. And I want to take them in a little bit different order. I want to put them in the order of first looking at waking up. Well, that's what we're here in Unity to do, right? We're here to wake up. We're here to gain insight into our true nature, into our oneness, into our divinity. And so that's so important. And that's what I believe we're here to do first and foremost. But if that's all we do, we can get into trouble. So we also have to grow up. We have to clean up, and we have to show up. So I want to tell you the other three, even though we're focusing mainly on cleaning up today. So growing up, that means we accept full accountability and responsibility for our lives and decisions. Wow, that's huge. You know, not blaming other people, not making excuses, accepting full accountability and responsibility for our lives and our decisions. That's what growing up is. I'm going to skip cleaning up for now. Showing up is about what we do in the world, showing up in the world. And it's only when we wake up, grow up, and clean up that we can consistently show up in the world at a level that transforms our lives. So let's look at this cleaning up, integrating our repressed and projected shadow aspects. Shadow work is the cleaning up piece. And when someone wakes up spiritually before they grow up and clean up emotionally, their unresolved wounds come out of the shadow in several ways. And we've heard about this so many times. I gave an example earlier where spiritual leaders are involved in sexual abuse or money, misappropriating money and all kinds of stuff like that. And that's because they may have woken up spiritually, but they haven't grown up and they haven't cleaned up. So they're showing up in a way that is not in integrity. Master says, when we skillfully meet our wounding and can understand its context, lucidly connecting our past and present, our healing is well underway. Our shadow is then no longer in the dark, and courage deepens. So how do we do this? We know the first way every Sunday at Unity Santa Fe and throughout the week, the first how-to is always prayer and meditation. And so I suggest that in your prayer time that you take this nugget out of the grace prayer, which I'm going to lead us in again today. I led us in the grace prayer last Sunday, but it's very appropriate for today as well. And I would invite you to take this part of it. Divine oneness. I am open to what needs to be revealed and what needs to be healed. I didn't say that right. I am open to you revealing what needs to be revealed and healing what needs to be healed. That's what our prayer is, to have revealed what needs to be revealed so that what can be healed can be healed. All right, so, and then I invite you to enjoy the uplifting power of our group prayer and especially during My Soul Circle. This is the last Sunday. If you notice the pre-announcements, we have 3 soul circles going on, and one of them is mine, and it's on spiritual bypassing. And so shadow work's going to be a big piece of that. And in our soul circle, we will be doing some divine mind prayer support for each other. So my soul circle is at 10 a.m. on Wednesday mornings, and you can contact Tanya at communications@unitysantafe.org or go to our website to register. And again, this is the last day because we close the groups after beginning the second week, so that, or after the second week, because of the intimacy and confidentiality and safety that we establish in these groups. Now, there are many systems and methodologies for doing spiritual work. Some of you may have done. There's a 4th step inventory that's done in 12-step programs in which we make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. One of the formats for doing that is to list all the people we feel resentment toward and then why we resent them. And then the last part of each one of those is what's my part? And that's where our shadow shows up. There and again, so many different so much different work and methodologies that are out there available. And just like in other areas of exiting the spiritual bypass, the first thing we have to do is become aware of what shadow is. And we have to know that before we can ever recognize it in ourselves and see it when it shows up in our lives and in our relationships. So again, spiritual bypassing, an aspect of spiritual bypassing is not doing our shadow work, keeping our shadow in the shadows. So I invite you to really increase your awareness of shadow, deepen your understanding of it, recognize it when you find yourself doing it, because once you know what it is, you'll begin to see it, and embrace it. Don't push it away. Embrace whatever you may be attempting to avoid, and just allow spirit to reveal what needs to be revealed and heal what needs to be healed. So in closing, I celebrate our courage to bring our shadow out of the shadows and to own our story instead of running from it. And let's begin doing that right now by being one together in a sacred time of shared prayer. So I invite you to just become present to the breath and listen to the sound of the bell to bring you to the bowl to bring you to the present moment. Just allow each breath to support you in relaxing the body, quieting the mind, opening the heart. And with this relaxed body, quiet mind, and open heart, silently hear these words of my adaptation of the grace prayer. For an awareness of divine oneness, I thirst. Into the divine, I commit my spirit, my soul, my body, my life, this challenge, all unforgiven states, my shadow. Divine will is my will. Divine will is done through me. I am healed at depth. What needs to be revealed is revealed. What needs to be healed is healed. As I glorify divine oneness by living in the fullness of grace. As I glorify divine oneness by doing my shadow work. And in the process, I am whole and complete. And let's sit in this willingness to have revealed what needs to be revealed and healed what needs to be healed. in the silence. And as we gently bring our attention back to this place and time, silently say, "Thank you, light of love I am, for the courage and wisdom to transform my life by taking my shadow out of the shadows. Thank you, light of love I am. Thank you, thank you, thank you, that it is so, and so it is, and so I am. Amen." And so now, once again, we'll be blessed by special music by Chris Chickering.
You've been holding back, so afraid that somehow you won't fit in. Stay in your space, afraid to lose face, deep down under your skin. You're a wild one. You're the flower that blooms by the light of the moon. You're an island where treasures abound in an ocean of blue. Oh, and hey now, step out of the shadows and show who you are. Oh, and hey now, you're a beautiful soul and the world needs to know it. So come on and be open and crazy, loving and laughing and free. Yeah, I know the deal. Life can make you feel like you just don't belong. But if they only knew what I see in you, they'd say, what took so long? You're a wild one. You're the flower that blooms by the light of the moon. You're an island where treasures abound in an ocean of blue. Oh, and hey now, step out of the shadows and show who you are. Oh, and hey now, you're a beautiful soul and the world needs to know it. So come on and be open, crazy, loving and laughing and free. You're the one thing that everyone wishes that somehow they'd found. You're that something that everyone misses when you're not around. Step out of the shadows and show who you are. Oh, hey now, you're a beautiful soul and the world needs to know it. So hey now, step out of the shadows and show who you are. Oh, hey now, beautiful
Thank you, Chris. And thank you again for allowing us to use your copyrighted music on our Facebook Live and as well as on Zoom. And I want to bid farewell to our Facebook Live viewers. Thank you again for suiting up, showing up, and being with us.